Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuhu. Welcome to another edition of It Takes Two. With me this week I have, as usual, my co-host sister Ruby Sowa. Assalamu alaikum, sister.
Alaikum salam.
And this week we are blessed with the presence of Sheikh Hilli. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Good to have you. Good to have you.
So much.
Okay, as we always do, we will jump straight into the first scenario just to make the best use of time. It's a very challenging letter. I'll warn you in advance. And it reads, "Dear It Takes Two. My wife is very religious. She gives majlis, she reads Quran, and she dresses modestly and prays on time. I've noticed that she has been spending a lot of time at home on the computer. I decided to look at her history, and to my horror, all the links were pornographic. What's even worse is that it was not soft pornography. It was very inappropriate. How should I approach this?" Anonymous viewer from Wales, Audible. Sheikh, speak to us. This is quite troubling issue, quite a big issue.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Of course, it must have been extremely difficult for this particular brother. But once again, as we have been saying, we must look at the picture in a broader sense rather than just this particular issue.
Yeah.
This could be an indication of the lack of connection, warmth, physical affinity that his wife is receiving from him. This is a key message actually when we talk about issues between marriages and marital setups. We say that most of the time one needs to look at themselves before looking at the other. You know, if we scrutinize our own behavior, at least before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we are in a position to say, okay, could I have done anything better? Is there something that I am not doing? You know, and certainly is a cause for concern, but at the same time, there has to be a question that's asked: how are they conducting their physical, intimate relationship? Is that the way it should be? Or is he too busy, not as interested? He hasn't really, and it's not only that, because as far as a female physiology is concerned, it is not actually just the physical relationship; it's the emotional support, and the words, the gestures, the time that's spent, the love that's expressed. It's a package. It comes not as much with the males, of course, but it's important for the males to understand that.
So emotional intimacy.
Emotional
for
intimacy,
yeah.
And it's not only the physical contact, but rather what he says, what he expresses, his general conduct with her. You know. Actually, we have a hadith from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is narrated that the Prophet said, "I'm surprised about the believer, or the one who strikes his wife and expects to sleep with her at night." So he hits her, but expects that everything is normal. So that could be extrapolated to mean, okay, it's a bigger picture. There has to be an understanding of the various steps towards achieving that. That's number one. The second thing to bear in mind for this particular brother is that the way he approaches it to his wife has to be quite sensitive as well. Perhaps his wife is going through depression, perhaps she's going through a hardship, and this is the only way that she's seeking to somehow get some kind of, it's a comfort thing for her to do. She's not getting something that she wants to. So it should not be in the sense of him coming down at her saying this, how dare you, this, that, and threatening and so on, because that will have counter productive.
We can assume, as knowledgeable as the type of personality she sounds like, she will be clear about the ficky side of it.
See,
so
most
it's more
people, as far as the Muslim
empathy.
community
It is an
is
empathy
concerned,
issue.
most people who do this type of thing and watch pornography or haram scenes or whatever, then they are aware that it's not permissible,
Right.
but they're weak. They give in to their whims and their desires, and there are other factors that are contributing.
Yes.
You know, sometimes they have a very powerful pull towards this type of thing. Sometimes it's addiction, sometimes the influence of others, sometimes it's not married and they want to get married. There's all kinds of reasons all, of course, unacceptable. There is no justification for watching this type of thing or this kind of scenes. However, we have to once again be calm and deal with it in the appropriate manner by looking at the right ways and the correct channels.
So with love, expressing love, care, empathy, patience while approaching his wife to discuss the issue.
Yes, and not discussing it at the time where they've had an argument, or he uses it as a tool to bring her down or to make her feel bad or to crush her self-esteem, to say, oh, I thought you're religious. How could you be doing this? This, you've disappointed me, or you're this and that. You know, to approach it in an understanding way when they're calm together or when they're sitting together and having and say, look, you know what, I've just come across this. Now, you know what, let's discuss it. It stays between us. Very important. It's not, you know, very crucial that the integrity and the reputation of the husband and the wife are kept pristine,
Must be maintained.
One of the problems we have is that, you know, sometimes what happens between the four walls is not kept there, and either the husband and the wife informs their parents because they want them to be supportive, and that actually has a negative bearing on the relationship, because the parents will take the side of the person who's talking and they'll come down hard on the other side. Yes, and too much out there. One of the Maraja and Najaf personally spoke to us and said, look, one of the issues today we're having, especially in the West, is that too much information is being disclosed to people outside the house, including the family. Yes, and we have an important hadith that says one of the qualities, the best qualities of a wife, righteous wife, is that she keeps the affairs of her husband secret. She does not disclose what is happening. And likewise for the husband. There's no way, under no circumstances should he be going out and saying to people, I'm this, my wife is that, and so on, and doing this and that to get support or to try and bring her down or to play the holier than thou game.
If I can just jump in, I would say that there are some issues where it makes sense to get support in your marriage, but this sounds like the type of issue that you know nobody else needs to know about.
Taboo on it.
Nobody else needs to know about.
I disagree.
Porn addiction.
I disagree.
You disagree?
Yeah.
And you're free to disagree.
I disagree.
I do want to finish. Finish the point I'm making. Porn, accessing porn, or even addiction of it, does exist in the Western society, and it is unfortunately impacting certain sections in the Muslim world, in the Muslim community. We know it's haram, but it's often a symptom, not just a problem in itself because it's haram, but a symptom of deeper issues. But I just wanted to put that out there before you disagreed with me, Sister Ruby.
I disagreed. I think that a lot of the time people just, as the Sheikh said, need support and they don't know where to go, and it's who they tell that is the issue. If you have a close friend or someone who you look as giving you wisdom, it's okay to go to them, but not from the view of browbeating the other person, just saying, look, I don't know how to deal with this. We're not all walking encyclopedias that we have the answers for everything. Sometimes when you speak to someone, you get a different viewpoint.
How do you distinguish whom is good and who is not so good? Just was wondering about that.
Well, the Sheikh can talk about good personalities, who we can trust and who we should take as friends, etc. That is stipulated. But what I wanted to say is, let's go out a bit. We don't know anything about this sister. We don't know, is she from the West? Because in the West there are statistics that 98% of people have watched porn at one point or another. And it starts from a very early age because it's a massive industry. And when you're young and say you weren't practicing or even practicing, you think you learn relationships from the cinema, from magazines, and from these type of things. And especially when it involves a woman, a lot of the time, as the Sheikh said, they're looking for something that involves intimacy and they're lacking in it, or attention. And then it can lead to an addiction because, as the brother said, it's not soft, it's not subtle, it's escalated. And that's the thing with these things, with addictions. You start off, you might look at it once, then, oh, I need to look at it again. And a lot of the time with women, they look at this as a form of education, as, oh, what can I do? If they're doing it, they're not thinking this is all staged. This is not real. The people aren't even real.
So you mean it could start as a pursuit of education, but then
some people look at it. Some people, unfortunately, look at it as a pursuit of education.
But it can turn into something.
And then it can turn into an addiction. Just like with, say, cigarettes or whatever, it could be a leisurely thing, and then it leads to other things it can do. It doesn't necessarily mean that they do. But for women, it's, if there's studies been done, and I've looked at it, why they look at porn, and there's a whole industry for women geared towards that, is because there's a lack of intimacy between the male and the female, and they're being sold a product. So I think the brother, as the Sheikh said, there needs to be communication. I would say go outside the home. I wouldn't even say I've gone through your history, your computer history, and seeing that you've gone through that. I'll just say, is there an issue here? Is there something I can do or we can do as a couple? Maybe there's deeper issues psychologically. We don't know what's happened in her childhood. We don't know, because again,
that's what I'm saying. This type of behavior often is
triggered by
related
something.
To a deeper issue. That's one issue in itself, accessing this inappropriate material. But even if the person was to stop, there may be something bigger that was a trigger that also needs to be addressed.
We have to be also careful not to be judgmental in many situations. Yes, all evidence points to this particular sister watching pornographic scenes or sites. What could there be a possibility that someone else is using her computer, for instance?
Could be.
You know, could it be that, you know, there's a virus out there, you know, you get all these ads or whatever, you know, she doesn't know, she's clicked on an email that says, I don't know, something, and then it's gone to those sites and it's increased. So it's crucial.
That's a question of fact.
Yes, it's crucial because the Quran is quite clear in condemning jumping to conclusions. Allah says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, in ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in fatabayyanu. Oh, you believe. If an individual who's wretched comes to you with news, ascertain the authenticity of it before you jump to conclusion, lest you destroy, lest then you create a huge, you cause huge problems, and then repairing it is incredibly hard. When you accuse someone, they will really be hurt deep down, you know. But let's just assume that there is possibly a strong evidence, or at least he's approached it in a particular way that that's given the wife at least some kind of understanding that he's not as harsh on this issue. I think the other point that's very important to consider here is the fact that this particular sister, if she's conducting this kind of practice, is in a way perhaps suffering with some kind of pain. It is an anesthetic. It's an analgesia. You know, it's like comfort eating. It's comfort eating. So it's not necessarily perhaps only the idea of lack of intimacy or the style of intimacy or the frequency of intimacy. It could be that element is okay, but it could also be just like how people are doing certain ways which are difficult for others to understand. It could be that there are concerns outside that area, but it's being fulfilled through this means because of the way that things have developed and progressed. So it does need a very much heart-to-heart conversation between the husband and the wife to try and really work out any potential issues together to be able to present and resolve these kind of matters.
I wanted to throw in a question which evolves out of this letter, but not directly that scenario. But you mentioned education. Obviously, accessing certain types of literature or visual images is haram. But in terms of education for young people or people who are older but are married, in terms of in that area of intimacy between the man and the wife, are there halal avenues?
Is that what you were going
is
to
there
say?
halal avenues to? How does one increase their knowledge in that area in a more permissible way?
First of all, I can't agree with you more that this is a very important area that we're not doing enough about. I remember visiting a particular center in one country. I won't say which one in case they are watching, and there's a youth group that were wanting to have a seminar to explain what happens at puberty. at the time of the boy and the girl, and to discuss this and to have, and the managing committee of the center was adamant, absolutely no. We don't want that. This is not an area for a mosque.
Right.
This is not something that should be discussed, Issues such as homosexuality, pornography, these kind of taboo areas, people think the mosque or the center or the Husseiniya is there just to mention fadail or, talk about the great attributes of the Ahlul Bayt, to remind people to get closer to God. But what about these social issues that we're really dealing with? If the person doesn't find the answer in the mosque or the Husseiniya or they'll go online.
Exactly.
They'll go online and they'll 9 times out of 10, the website that they're going to is not a good one. Or they'll have their non-Muslim friend or a Muslim friend who's far away from teachings advising them, telling them, no, it's okay, this thing is fine, God will forgive, it's a small thing, it's not a problem, you can't get married, so you can do that. Of course, what we're finding in marital relationships is the destructive impact of pornography on the physical relationship, because if the husband or the wife, if they've grown with watching these kind of things, they come into a marriage with full of these kind of images, and they're not satisfied, and they're not getting what they expect to see when they are in a physical relationship with their other half, and so they get disappointed, and so they think, okay, well, why is it not happening like that, or why is this, this is what I envisioned it to be.
It can be very dangerous.
So it has
very dangerous, because I know it can affect. Sorry to cut in, but it can affect young men who become addicted to this type of material, and like an addiction, they need more of a hit, so it becomes more extreme, more even verging into more perverted and violent types. And this is not going to help a man in his marriage.
And the woman isn't satisfied because they've raised their bar, so to speak, because of the exposure. Biology, physiologically, psychologically, it has damaging. Today, it's not us just that's saying it. People know, the scientists, the psychologists, the behavioral experts, they're all saying the impact it has had on relationships, on people's mentality, psychology, the way they look at things, how minds have become polluted. And yes, it is a shaitan that's with most people at all times, because it's in the phone now. Previously, you'd have to buy a magazine or get a movie.
Well, it's on billboards.
It's on billboards. Now it's on the phone. It's very easy to be accessed. Young children are able to access it. So we have to deal with it.
So
we can't shun away from this problem.
How do we create this environment in a halal way where, as you said, these quote-unquote taboo subjects can be, dealt with in an appropriate fashion in the right environment, which is a mosque or Islamic centers?
A month ago, we organized, just to give you an example, we organized here in London a marriage course for people who have just been married for the last, within the first 5 years.
Right.
And it's for couples. And what we did was one of the sessions, which was separate, and the males went somewhere else and the females somewhere else, another room. And the topic was, let's talk about sex.
Intimacy, yes.
And we came out very clearly, and I'll say it, no problem, and we had pictures and we put it on social media or with the PowerPoints, It was no restriction as far as the depth that we were talking about, because the realization has to be understood that if we do not discuss it, people have misunderstandings, they will have misconceptions, they will seek answers from elsewhere. So education in the correct manner. So education means we talk about it in terms of Sharia, what the Sharia accepts, what are the ways that are halal, what are the things that are haram, what is expected. Also psychologically, what can we be doing? So what we need out there today is we need literature geared for a Muslim environment, for Islamic audience, respected, written in a style that doesn't necessarily arouse, but more to educate.
In a modest fashion.
With no images necessarily, but more to say, look, this is this, this is that, this is that. So we have, for instance, a book by Sayyid Muhammad Rizvi called Marriage and Morals in Islam, which goes into depth about these issues. That goes into
language.
It is when you read it, you are educating yourself. Yes, we need those kind of things, especially for the youth, and for it to be discussed in a very controlled environment by experts who are able to answer, scholars, psychologists, marital therapists, but importantly, not to run away from it because it's embarrassing or it's shameful. to have the right environment and to discuss the right thing.
And I think it should
Excellent,
go back
excellent.
to the parents as well. I think parents need to be open and have dialogue with their children as that we're nurturing them and getting them ready
Is
to...
it due to his parents?
I think it is, because they're going to get the information from somewhere else, rather a trusting environment. You teach them before you get married, this is blah, blah, blah. You be very honest about it, so when they're faced with that situation, they're not surprised. And sometimes people think the feeling, well, such and such is doing it, I must do it as well. With women, you know, sometimes you feel like, oh, they're doing this, or let me look for some knowledge here, etc. But I think we need to start, as the Sheikh said, with the youth, with the parents. We need to educate the parents, and we need to stop keeping things behind closed doors.
Okay, so you believe that, if I can put it in my own words, that we've gone past the stage of saying, astaghfirullah, this is haram, and fast on Thursday, something like. We've gone past that stage,
they
right?
They affect our youngsters. We will bear the brunt of it later, so let's talk about it.
Wanting to move on, but we just need to cover one more point, which is what the brother mentioned in the letter specifically. Could it be related to negligence on the part of a husband, relating to this particular scenario, because of it's the wife that's accessing this material?
Well, it could be. We don't know the factors. I don't know the woman's psychology and what she expects. It could be a manifestation of many things. That's my opinion.
There's no doubt that it takes two, and the more that realization hits hard in marital relationships, the more these problems are solved quicker and in an efficient manner. And I think in these instances, and it's sometimes, we have to also say, it could well be the other way around. The wife finding out that the husband is also accessing these sites or watching these kind of movies or these kind of scenes. And so it requires them both to work as a team, as a real strong partnership in seeking proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One thing I'd like to also mention is, many of the things that we discuss are also a symptom of lack of spirituality in marriage. And that's a key thing. What do we mean by that? We mean that, we believe that the fundamental concept of marriage in Islam is to seek proximity to God and to get to paradise together. So that is a key cornerstone for a successful marital relationship. And what happens is that in marriages, if the husband and wife aren't compatible in that goal of seeking God's pleasure for their own purpose, for their own benefit, what you find is that they'll seek avenues to fulfill that void that exists in them. So sometimes it's drugs, sometimes it's illicit relationships, sometimes it's pornography, sometimes it's abuse, sometimes they walk out of the relationship. And that is an indication of what? Of the lack of appreciating, how they could both work together to strengthen their iman and to work for the service of God, for the betterment of themselves and others. It works wonders when you have the example, of course, of Amir al-Mu'mineen and Sayyidah Fatima, peace and blessings be upon them, how their ethos was to make others happy, and they worked together to do that. We have these wonderful examples. Chapter 59, verse 9 was revealed in honor of this blessed relationship, where a beggar comes to the Prophet and says, Ya Rasulullah, I need some food. And the Prophet sends him to Amir al-Mu'mineen. Now, Amir al-Mu'mineen takes this man home, and Sayyidah Fatima has not had food, neither has Imam Hassan and Hussein. And when this man comes inside, Sayyidah Fatima asks Amir al-Mu'mineen, what can we do? And he says, well, he's a poor man and we need to give him food. And so they have food enough for one person. So what Amir al-Mu'mineen does, he presents the food in collaboration with his holy blessed wife, who says, let's feed him and we'll sleep hungry. She doesn't say to him, hold on, and there's a problem between them over the fact of why did you bring him home? There is a synchronization of the goal, and that's to please God. And that's what? Altruism, to place others before ourselves. So they feed this man and they all sleep hungry, and in the morning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the Prophet says to Amir al-Mu'mineen that Allah has revealed this verse in chapter 59 verse number 9, which essentially translates that they place others over themselves even though they needed it most. They're practicing altruism. So I know some people say, oh, that's theoretical, that kind of, but let's work towards having that spiritual connection. The brother saying she's religious. Well, you know what? maybe the husband and the wife need to work together, pray together. This Salatul Jama'ah, how beautiful it is. The husband stands, his wife behind him, if there's children. This unit to establish his Jama'ah prayers together. Read Dua Kumail together, recite Quran from time to time together. Do an active participation in an Islamic charity or an organization together. Help make a difference together. That brings them together. And these kind of things will fade out. This practice will fade out because they have a shared objective.
So that will bring the closeness. Just before we go to a break, is there something that you would like to finish on for this section, Sister Rumi?
No, I think we've covered it.
The has covered it immaculately. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Hope to see you on the other side of the break. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.